Hi everyone, I'm Sala Kim. Welcome to the WDSU Hot Seat. Tonight we talk about the March 23rd election and focus on the district attorney's race for St. Tammany and Washington parishes. This would be to fulfill the unexpired term of the late Warren Montgomery. And again, our condolences to Warren's friends and family. We have two candidates who qualified for this seat. They are both here, both Republicans, Mr. Colin Sims, the interim district attorney, and Mr. Vincent Nguyen. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. We always begin with opening statements, so 60 seconds to tell us why you think you're the best candidate for this seat. We're going to begin with you, Mr. Sims, because we go alphabetically.
Sure. I've spent my entire career as a criminal prosecutor. Grew up in Mandeville, went to Loyola Law School, and commuted across the lake to learn how to try cases in New Orleans. Spent a month in the misdemeanor department, was in the felony criminal division prosecuting major felons in a courtroom, running a docket, learning how to do that from others, then training my replacement. At the age of 27, I had about 40 felony jury trials under my belt and left to take a job with the United States Attorney's Office, where I received some of the best training that you could receive. I prosecuted major gangs, drug trafficking organizations, child exploitation, public corruption, and have done it all over the country. In 2015, I left the U.S. Attorney's Office to return home, to come back and restore the credibility of an office that had been embarrassed. And join Warren Montgomery, a very good and honorable man, to rebuild that office. I have supervised 100 of the 140 employees for the last 9 years. I have supervised the prosecution of 27,000 felons, and we maintain a 90% conviction rate in that office right now.
All right, Mr. Sims, thank you. Mr. Nguyen, your turn to tell us why you think you're the best candidate for this seat. 60 seconds.
Thank you. I'm married and have 3 children. I grew up in Mandeville and attended Mandeville, LSU, and Loyola Law School. I work as a prosecutor where I've tried 400 cases. I left the DA's office and went into private practice where I've tried over 300 cases as a litigator. As your next DA, I will aggressively prosecute violent offenders, domestic abusers, drug dealers, and will not negotiate plea deals with criminals. I will be a fiscally responsible DA who understands what it means to manage a budget. I will not ask for a new tax. I will be accessible and accountable to the people of our district. I will be present in Slidell, Covington, Franklinton, and reopen the office in Bogalusa, one of our worst crime areas in the district. This office is more than a felony division. It takes a leader with 26 years of experience as a prosecutor, civil litigator, and business owner to properly manage and run the DA's office.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nguyen. Since you mentioned violent criminals, let's start with that question. If elected, and I'll start with you, 30 seconds, what is your plan to deal with violent criminals?
We need to start making sure we try these cases. Currently, the office has only tried 33 cases out of 3,100 felonies. They lost 8 of those cases. One was a murder. We've got to do a better job of trying those cases, making sure that those violent criminals are brought to trial.
All right, thank you. Mr. Sims, I'll give you time to rebuttal from that comment, and then also you have 30 seconds to tell us how you plan to deal with violent criminals.
First off, I'm the only person who's ever actually prosecuted a felon. So the 300 cases my opponent talks about as his time as an ADA was misdemeanors and tickets. He has no experience in dealing with violent crime. So to do that, you have to utilize task forces and relationships and utilize wiretaps, investigative techniques, and be a force multiplier in pocket areas of violent crime. I've done that my entire career. We're presently doing that in Bogalusa. I've done it in Covington. And every time I've done that, violent crime has dropped dramatically. I won the FBI Director's Award for dropping violent crime by 87% on the West Bank of Jefferson Parish. I do it all the time, and I've done it for 18 years.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sims. 60 seconds for the next question. How will you deal with low-level drug offenders and non-violent felony offenders? 60 seconds.
Well, we do that now. We have 5 phenomenal specialty courts, which is why for anyone to say we don't do deals with criminals would be completely inaccurate. We do that every day because a lot of offenders are nonviolent, they're addicts, they have mental health issues. We place them in specialty court. Under my supervision, we have been the gatekeepers of that program. For those in Louisiana who commit a felony, 50% commit another felony. For those who complete our specialty court programs in partnership with the judges, only 8 to 12% recidivate. We've also developed an early intervention program to expedite that process. Instead of individuals languishing in jail on $30 a day taxpayer dime, we now identify them in 2 weeks, and every other week we make them an offer. Instead of waiting 60 days for a defense attorney to ask us, we bring the defendants in, make them the offer, protect their rights, and quickly place them in a program that we know we're going to do and save taxpayer money and further ensure that the offender has an opportunity not to recidivate. And we've also developed programs with the North Shore Technical Community College to help them get vocational training as well, because if you have something to lose, you're likely not to recidivate.
Yeah, and follow up with them. What is your plan to deal with low-level drug offenders and nonviolent felony offenses? What do you think is the most effective way to deal with them, Mr. Wynn?
So there's a couple of tools that the DA's office has in its arsenal. One, you can use diversion, which is DA probation, basically. It gives you the opportunity to bring people in, to have them go through a screening process, make sure that they're given the right tools that they're needed in order to make themselves better. That gives you an opportunity that first-time offenders and people that maybe have drug addictions, you can put them in specialty courts. The specialty courts are probably the best in the state. We have an opportunity to catch people that have drug addiction issues and make sure that they get screened properly. If we put people in jail constantly, all we're doing is creating a whole generation from 18 to 24 of folks that can't actually do anything in life anymore. They have felonies. So we need to make sure that these specialty courts are utilized to the best of their ability.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wynn. I'll start the next question with you, too. I know both of you have stated that you are not for new taxes to fund the DA's office. You have said, Mr. Wynn, in the past that if elected, you will generate new sources of revenue. 30 seconds, tell us an example of how you will generate resources and funding for your
Sure.
office.
So back when I was at the DA's office, there was an option to utilize diversion as well. You can utilize diversion to help with and defray certain costs, including salaries of those folks that work in the office. You can utilize those to help with programs and things of that nature to generate funds. You can also have a worthless check division that actually works. Currently, the worthless check division is one secretary. When I was at the DA's office, we had 2 investigators, 1 actual attorney who handled it, and 6 secretaries. You can generate up to 18% of a check in order to actually deal with those issues.
All right, thank you. Mr. Sims, what is your idea to generate funds for the DA's office?
I'll tell you the things that we're doing now. First off, you can't make money off diversion. So diversion can't be a revenue generator because you have indigent people that need a second chance. You can't go make it a system of haves and have-nots and make money off diversion, point one. The worthless check division. Worthless checks are a failing program. No one's writing checks anymore, which is why it's a very small program in pretty much every DA's office. What we've done is, for asset forfeiture purposes, we've placed one of our investigators and embedded them with a DEA task force group. They get a percentage of everything that they take. Already this year, we've taken in $400,000, which is 4 times the money we've taken in over the last 3 years. That's a revenue generator.
Mr. Wynn, do you want to respond to his comments?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, let's move on, because the follow-up question to that question is, do you support, or what are your thoughts of a proposal or referendum to make the DA's office its own taxing body or entity? Mr. Sims, what are your thoughts about that?
The only way I would ever be for having the DA's office to have an independent source of revenue if it wasn't a tax increase to the taxpayer and truly was a swap. But I think there needs to be oversight by parish government. The problem is that the DA's office needs to be able to rely upon a fixed set of budgetary authority to plan and rely upon to keep the citizens safe. You can't be in a situation where the parish gets itself in a position because of 20 years worth of decision making with all these dedicated funds that can't be legally spent on certain things, to where the DA's office becomes held hostage and there's an accidental defunding of law enforcement that prevents us from keeping the citizens properly safe.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sims. Mr. Wynn, what are your thoughts about a referendum or possibly a proposal to make the DA's office its own taxing body?
As I've said repeatedly, I'm still against any tax on our community as it relates to any kind of specialized tax. I think we have sufficient funds inside that office in order to run the office. I don't believe we need any more money. It's odd that my opponent sits here and tells you that he would be okay with a specialized tax when in fact he failed to vote on the first 2 taxes that they tried. He didn't even vote on it. And so it's my understanding, why do we need a tax? We don't need a tax. We have plenty enough budgetary funds to actually run that office. We don't need any more money.
Well, the question wasn't that you're going to ask for more taxes, but would you make it a separate entity so you don't have to go through the parish government to get funds? That was the
I would
question.
not. I don't think it's fair to the judiciary. I don't think it's fair to the sheriff. And I don't think it's fair to the courthouse. Without those funds, they don't also have the opportunity. So I wouldn't segregate my own office in order to actually not to give them, myself, taxes and not them.
All right, do you want to respond, Mr. Sims?
I do. The independent DA tax only went on once. Everything else was to place additional taxes as a whole onto the parish that was brought about by the parish, not the DA. And in addition to that, again, no one wants to be in a situation, first off, since my opponent's never prosecuted anyone for a felony, if we had to investigate people with parish government, who are in control of our budget, that'd be pretty awkward. You'd want to be independent. You don't want to go hat in hand every month and not know what your money's going to be. You want it to be an independent amount of money. No one's asking for additional money. It's whether or not it should be an independent source of funding, not an additional.
Right. So since you talked about trial and felony trials, let's talk about that. That has been in the headlines a lot for you, Mr. Nguyen. Let's get to that question. You have never prosecuted a felony trial. You keep saying that the office is not a prosecuting position. What is your response to people who ask you, why do you want to be the district attorney when you have never prosecuted a felony trial?
I don't think that's what is required of the job. As in fact, my office, when I was at the office, that wasn't my job, to prosecute felonies. I think it's more of an administrative position. It gives you the opportunity to actually try cases when you're there. And so, in my opinion, in order to prosecute, you need to hire good people. You need to make sure that they're the ones that can actually try the cases. This is an administrative position. I have tried over 400 cases at the DA's office. I have tried over 300 cases. I handle 100 felony cases a year in my private practice. I have actually tried over 8 cases, just not felony jury trials.
Yeah, if it's not a prosecuting job, in your flyer, why are you touting that you are a tough prosecutor?
Because I was a tough prosecutor. I have prosecuted over 400 cases as a trial. I prosecuted thousands of cases when I was at the DA's office.
All right, do you want to respond to that, Mr. Sims?
The problem is you can't be a tough prosecutor if you've only done misdemeanors and tickets. And the problem is that to do this job, to evaluate, we charge 3,100 felons per year, sub 3,100 felons per year, with felony violations of law. That means we have to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of those cases, evaluate what law enforcement did on those cases, help law enforcement make those cases better, teach them how to make cases better, work on arrest, search, and seizure, deploy the rules of evidence to get evidence in for a conviction. And if you've never done that, you can't even evaluate the cases with your staff or sit there with the staff. Everyone who works for you cannot be more experienced than you who you're managing. And I've done it for almost 18 years. I've devoted my entire career to this job.
All right.
I would like
You
to
can
respond.
Yes, go ahead.
My opponent and I were at the DA's office over an equal amount of time. I was there for 8 years. He was there for 8 years. I have tried over 400 cases. He's tried one case as a prosecutor in St. Tammany Parish. One case.
That's not true. That's blatantly false.
That is
Can you
one
respond to
case.
that? What do you mean
I can
one
name
case?
them.
He has been there for years. What do you mean?
He has not personally tried, but one case in that office.
I convicted Jack Strain. I convicted Larry Bickham. I was a prosecutor in a homicide with the last name defendant McGee. I taught one of the new law student prosecutors. Her first her first jury trial was with me as a prosecutor. I was going back to the U.S. Attorney's Office to finish the Harvey Hustlers case. I have convicted 70 defendants through jury trials in state and federal court. I did 40 in Orleans Parish before I was 27 years old, and you've never done it one time. That would be embarrassing.
Excuse me. In
The
St. Tammany
misdemeanor
Parish
department,
for the same amount of time that I've actually tried cases. I've tried 400 cases. He's tried, he tells me, 2.
400 misdemeanors
I've
and
found
tickets,
one.
Vincent. 400 misdemeanors and tickets, and he's never picked a jury. Even as a defense attorney, he did 400 defendants.
Again,
and
I
not
have
one
the
time,
experience.
sir.
You don't have the
I'll wait till you
experience that
finish.
I have.
All right.
I'll wait. May I finish?
Yes, you have 30 seconds.
Even as a defense attorney, he never found one client who needed to go to a jury trial. That is unheard of. So he has never done. The Metropolitan Crime Commission grades these offices on their felony department, and he's never done it once. And in fact, he thought it was important enough to lie in his resume online and say he has years of experience in the felony department, along with 4 other departments that he's never worked in. If anyone's applying for a job and you were lied to, it should be game over, except in politics where facts don't matter.
I'd like to
when you
respond to
can
that. He's
respond, you have
referring
30
to a
seconds.
specific diagram that we used. It doesn't say that I tried felony cases. What it says is that I have experience in the felony sections. What I'm saying is that as a defense lawyer, I did in fact try cases.
In fact,
I tried cases.
it said at the district attorney's office, you have years of experience in all these departments.
That is not what it says.
It does, and you listed juvenile, to which you have none, non-support, to which you have none.
That is not what
a
it says.
felony department, which you've never been in, And I spent a month in the misdemeanor department. It is an entry-level position in a district attorney's office.
Okay, let's move. Are you done? We can move on to the next
Yes, ma'am.
question. Mr.
Sure.
Sims, unless you wanted to respond. This question's for you, Mr. Sims. Mr. Nguyen, apologies. You are not being endorsed by Sheriff Randy Smith, the sheriff of St. Tammany Parish. What is your response to people who think that is a critical endorsement for this critical race for the parish?
I started by saying I have the endorsement, and it's not really an endorsement. I have testimonials and endorsements from all of the major police chiefs, Slidell, Mandeville, Covington, Madisonville. I think I make the sheriff nervous because just like my boss and myself, we are good government. And by the way, the sheriff offered me his endorsement and was upset because he views the chiefs as his political enemies and is upset that they are endorsing me. And at the end of the day, just like my boss, we are going to be independent. He's also upset with me because we advised him not to engage in an unconstitutional arrest of an agent that the tax-paying citizens of St. Tammany don't even get to know the amount of money settled for. And we are not going to be his yes boys or just go with the flow. This is not a boys club. We are an independent office on good government, and I don't think he likes that.
All right. Do you want to respond, Mr. Sims?
I would just like to say that I think it speaks volumes that the sheriff has endorsed me, his rank and file has endorsed me. It says that there is a problem in the DA's office. The law enforcement community cannot work with this office. If you ask the folks that are in each one of these municipalities, these chiefs who are not civil service, if in fact these rank and file endorse me, they all endorse me. They do not endorse Colin Senn. The problem is they're prohibited from actually endorsing anyone because they're civil service. They can't even put a sign in their yard. And so their chiefs have given the opportunity to say what they want, and their rank and file is very upset.
Actually, the rank and file for the sheriff's office hasn't said anything. They were tricked to be in a photograph that they were asked and invited to, and a lot of them call me and say, I'm so sorry. They do support me and whisper, we're not allowed to tell you that, but we really hope you win to be the DA. And also, going back to the sheriff had, there was an assistant attorney, AG investigator who specializes in child exploitation cases that got reprimanded because he did step out to support me despite the repercussions in his office. And I think that speaks volumes considering I have a 90% felony conviction rate. We accept 93% of their cases. And for child abuse cases, we boast a 95.6% conviction rate. I can't understand how that wouldn't be acceptable by law enforcement. And every one of them come to us for legal advice weekly on their investigations.
I'll give you a chance to
Just real
respond
quick.
to that, Mr. Nguyen.
The rank and file with sheriff that's pictured behind me that's actually endorsing me, they took a day off for me in order to endorse me when they went and did that filming.
Did all of them take a day off, and
They
were they
all
all
took
told
the
clearly
entire-
and candid? Were
Yes.
you candid with them that they are taking a photograph
They
to
are.
support you
Not only
and
did
that
they take
are
a
going to be in this
photograph,
ad?
but they filmed a commercial, and they took their day off for me.
So every single one of those law enforcement officers we
You're correct.
see were there and were told that they're in an ad supporting
That's correct.
Mr. Vincent Nguyen.
That's
That's
not right.
correct.
And what is your response to that, Mr. Sims?
I know some of these guys who support me. Their spouses support me. They put social media posts about me. It's fictitious. Anyone who speaks against this sheriff, by the way, in a public place, has to resign. 3 people just had to resign because they were caught speaking their mind and were accidentally overheard. It just happened 2 weeks ago. I don't think that that's a good environment to work. And again, how in the world would law enforcement support an 18-year defense attorney who has never prosecuted a felony case or investigated crime and doesn't have the ability to advise them?
All right. Thank you so much. We are running out of time. We have to move on to a quick lightning round. Yes or no questions regarding some of the bills that lawmakers are working on during this special session on crime. Do you support, yes or no, a bill to expand death penalty, adding electrocution and nitrogen gas as new methods? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Sims? Do you
No.
support? You don't support the death penalty.
No, I support the death penalty. I don't support anything expanding it until I make sure it's deployed properly.
Okay. Do you support the bill to lower the minimum age a person can be tried as an adult to 17 in violent crimes? Yes or
I
no?
do.
I do.
Do you support the bill to raise carjacking sentences from a minimum of 2 years to 5, a minimum of 5?
I do.
I do.
Mr. Sims? Do you support the bill to eliminate parole for those convicted of a crime after August 1st, except for certain people convicted as juveniles? Yes or no?
I do.
All right.
I do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vincent Nguyen and Mr. Sims, for being here. We're going to conclude with final remarks, 30 seconds each, to tell us why you think you're the best candidate. We'll start with you, Mr. Nguyen, since we began with Mr. Sims for the opening statement.
My opponent has destroyed the efficiency and accountability of the DA's office by prosecuting 65% less cases than the previous administration. We don't need a felony prosecutor who micromanages the office. We need a leader. My opponent has only tried one case in St. Tammany Parish. I have tried over 400 as a prosecutor, 300 as a civil litigator in our district. I will fix the problems and make the office more efficient and successful.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Nguyen. Mr. Sims.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am a managing prosecutor. I have supervised over 100 employees for 9 years. I am a career state and federal prosecutor who has convicted some of the most dangerous felons in this country. My opponent has never even handled one felony, making him the least experienced person of all the individuals that he would be supervising. He talks about being an administrator. He has supervised maybe 10 people in his career. I have supervised 100 to 140 per year. I have run this DA's office with $3 million less than the average DA's office is similarly situated. We are about good government. We will not allow this office to be a political lightning rod, which is where he worked before.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Sims and Mr. Nguyen. Thank you so much, and good
Thank
luck
you very
with your
much. Appreciate it.
campaign. That's going to conclude this edition of WDSU Hot Seat. For more information on this hot seat and other debates, you can go right now to WDSU.com.